live from the internet. It's
ZN
ZN
Live.
Live. And we're soon going to have a beautiful hashtag to tell you all about it. Today, we have a very special guest all the way from Poland, someone who's actually been with ZN as a hyperlearner or an intern, an expert at graphic design and illustration, and somebody that we wanted to talk to today because this is Pride Month, and we wanted to tackle a very interesting topic around gender identity and also communication around those topics. And Mar has a personal story that they will share very shortly, but also has written a thesis on gender, the illustrated guide to non-binary identity. And you will talk a little bit more about this. But tell us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to write the thesis that you did.
Hi, so my name is Mar. I am a non-binary trans person from Poland. And I am, as you said, a graphic designer and an illustrator. And so my thesis that I've got right here is an illustrated book. And basically what made me write and illustrate it and also bookbind it was that basically in Poland, we don't have that many resources about trans topics in general, but specifically about non-binary identities. And I do think that it's, as an idea, non-binary identities tend to be seen as novelty for lots of people and very hard to grasp. So this is kind of a guide that is meant to engage and help both people that need to explore their gender identity or understand certain topics, but also for them to have a tool to show to their parents, family, close ones, because not everyone is, great with words, with explaining, and it's something very personal, and it's hard to stay leveled and explain stuff thoroughly sometimes when you're filled with emotion. So that was my main goal with this.
So can you tell us just what does it mean to be a non-binary trans person, or just what is the non-binary identity that you focused on in your thesis, and how does it apply to yourself?
Yeah, so in my understanding that I use is that non-binary identities is anything that is outside of the exclusively binary two boxes of the binary genders, which is men and women. So anyone who feels in any shape or form outside of those two boxes, in my understanding, falls into the non-binary umbrella. So basically I and being non-binary can look whichever way, and needs of non-binary people can be very differing from person to person.
So it's all the different kind of sense of identity outside of the two traditional male-female gender that we have that people use in society. Now, obviously, as we talked about Pride Month, and the international movement to get people to understand, respect, tolerate difference of identity and of lifestyle. Now, from outside, and a lot of the conversation in Poland that we hear about, I would say in the EU at large, is that there's a pretty conservative government that is not very tolerant of this kind of difference. How has it been for you? I mean, because you've been in the UK, then in Brussels, and now you're in Poland. So are you able to be kind of publicly and comfortably, I mean, I guess publicly, yes, since you're on ZN Live, but how is it, and how respected and understood you feel in society in Poland today? And maybe you can compare that to Brussels and the UK.
Yeah, definitely. So it is tough. I am very, very, very lucky in the terms that I live in I think, one of the most liberal cities in Poland. and also in that I have lots of support in my family as well, which, emotional and also financial support, because being trans is not cheap. But yeah, so the legislature that was pushed, it's kind of went to I think Polish government tends to have a singular scapegoat, and that used to be the LGBTQ community 2 years back, let's say, and more or less. And you could see that from the no LGBT free zones in Polish countryside. You could see it from vetoing legislature that was meant to make life easier for Polish queer people, especially trans people, because as of right now, to change your legal gender marker, you need to sue your parents. You need to take your parents to court. And it's a very emotionally taxing experience, especially when there is already a rift between families. So it is tough, and generally, even outside of legislature and government stuff, for example, there is a organization that is very focused on both LGBTQ issue and the issue with abortion. Basically, they have those trucks that yell out about, that LGBT people are pedophiles, and they are on the streets of the main Polish cities. And again, in my city, they've been forced out, which has been really great. But it is not as hard for me, I would say, than it is for other queer and trans people, because I think it's easy to understand, like, it's much easier in your real everyday life to be a masculine woman than to be a feminine man in the society. I think that's generally the experience. So if I am being seen as a masculine woman, that's my safety is not as compromised outside.
I just wanted to get back to what you said earlier, just because I think that there is an increased understanding of the term non-binary, of being a trans person. What I think most people don't fully understand is what it means to be a non-binary trans person, and how those two coincide. So I was wondering if maybe you could provide a little bit of clarity on that. So how can it be both? Because I think maybe it's because people like to think in boxes. Okay, you're a woman, but you feel like a man, so you're trans, or vice versa. But how is it for you? Maybe that's the easiest way to explain it.
So the way that I define being trans, that I think is a very a good way to think about it, is that the trans umbrella covers everything if you identify differently than what you were assigned at birth. So there's any kind of difference, even the slightest one, if you decide that it's enough to feel and identify as trans, then that's enough. Because there is lots of non-binary people that do not identify as transgender. I personally do, and I think the majority of people do. And so it's not just as much as not binary trans people don't necessarily have to medically transition or even socially transition. And the needs of any trans person differs. So there can be also a non-binary trans person that decides not to transition in any way, or only transition socially, which, for example, change name, change expression, change pronouns. Or they can choose some path of medical transition. So as for me, I have decided to go on testosterone. I have decided to get a surgery, which I'm now recovering from. My little binder peeking out. But it's, as I said, it's kind of, it can also be the case with binary trans people that can just decide, hey, I like my boobs, I want to be a man with boobs, and that is absolutely valid as well, yeah.
So I just want to point. So Daniel is saying, hello, Mar. Nice to see you at ZN Live. Guido is saying, lovely, Mar. Miss working with you. Justin is saying, happy Pride Month. And so is Gaia. So we have a live audience. Great to have everybody on there. Now, how was your experience? I want to just follow on one thing, which is those free zones. Does that mean you're not allowed to go? Or if you go, you're not allowed to say your identity? So just one question. And the second one is, how did your experience in Poland compare to what you experienced in Brussels and in the UK?
Mm-hmm. So with the LGBT free zones are absolutely just was. I mean, I think most of them are being get rid of right now. They are just for symbolic value. Because no one is actually, they're like, hey, this, the LGBT ideology, we don't do that here. Which actually I think majority of them has been crumpled because of the lack of funding from the EU, because EU was like, okay, no LGBT, no funding. And then they were like, hey, that's not what we meant. No. So a very silly thing, but very scary also for those people living there, of course, even especially young people. And when it comes to comparison, so I started identifying as non-binary when I was 16. And then when I was 18, I left to UK to do my bachelor's. And in Polish high school, I did not dare to, be outwardly non-binary or trans in any way. And I also didn't really have a language, because in Polish, the pronouns and language is still developing in a way. But in the UK, I decided to be out from the beginning, and I made a point to correct people when they addressed me. I was part of the LGBTQ society. I was even a vice president during my last year. So I definitely felt much safer, I would say. For sure, I had more understanding than I did in Poland. But also, it's a little bit of a tricky thing, because in English, you do not know if someone is misgendering you when you talk to them. In Polish, you do, because the way that they talk to you differs. So it's a weird little thing that the only way that you can say is usually when you're not there, and then someone else has to tell you. But was definitely, I felt much safer. It also did, even right now, people, for example, find my name funny because it's not obvious, it's not Polish right now. And I even can see from other people, for example, in Coventry, which is not super liberal city, people, there would be trans feminine people. So usually people who were, assigned male at birth with more feminine expression, feminine identity, going out in skirts and not feeling scared. And here in Poland, even in my city, I do not see people like that. And I would, be scared for their safety if they did.
Mar, you mentioned the pronouns, and how painful is it for you if someone uses the wrong ones? And also, Phil had an interesting question. Why do we say they, them? Why isn't they just enough? Why do we have to do or he, him, and she? Why the extra? why both of them? You see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly not sure. I mean, it's usually, I think, just to make it easier for the use of it. And also sometimes people have mixed pronouns. So they use multiple pronouns, for example. But yeah, I don't know why it's not just, I think maybe for clarity as well, because if I put a random day in my bio, people might be confused. But if I put they, them, everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, that you can do that, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the first question? But
No, that was the more important question is, are you offended when people use the wrong ones? How can we avoid that from happening? What would you advise organizations to do? Like, how should we tackle this whole pronoun situation?
Yeah, so for me, it is painful, especially in English, because in English there is a right answer. In Polish, I don't feel like there is. In Polish, I mix my pronouns between masculine and feminine because I do not like the use of like those near pronouns in Polish for myself. But in English, it's like it's right there, and you don't use it that much. Just say they. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I can also roll with a he him, but the she her is quite painful. And how can it be helped? I mean, I personally think that a great ally can create an environment to make people feel safe to share their pronouns, for example. So being like, hi, my name is Phil, and I use he him. What is your name? And so if someone doesn't feel like outing themselves, for example, that creates a safe environment. In those the companies also, when you're applying for company, you can put in an option of what pronouns do you use, and that will make it easier for people to be like, before you even see them and make assumptions about them, how to address them. Because I feel like when you already have assumptions, it's hard to switch it a little bit. So I think that's a good way for companies to tackle that issue. And I also think it's, and we talked about it with Liora before, is that do not make it a case of asking pronouns only the people that you think look trans, because that's really alienating at one thing, but also can be painful when there is someone with, for example, a binary trans person and is trying very, very hard to, blend in with other women or men. And so they can find it painful, like, oh, so what I'm doing is not enough. That's sad. So I think in my ideal world, we would ask everyone pronouns, and everyone would feel free to share their pronouns. That's my personal idea of an utopia.
So we've got Justin saying, happy Pride Month as an ally. What is it the best way for us to help bring forward some LGBT issues to the forefront, especially for trans people issues there in Poland? And Gaia saying, it's not that difficult to be an ally, just be one. So what is your answer maybe to Justin, if you can?
Mm-hmm. I think giving queer people voice is a first thing. The whole nothing about us without us thing. And there's just so many things to do, right? Like, because I feel like, especially in the West, Pride became this kind of a festival of sorts, which is great. Like, queer joy is a revolutionary act, and it's great. But we need to remember that this is also a political tool to bring the issues to the forefront and tackle the issues of the most marginalized people. And in Poland, I think the best way to support queer people in Poland is to, give money to the organizations. We do, like, obviously, money makes the world go round. Those organizations need resources because they do so much great work, from making articles that are easy to access, because, as I said, lots of resources are in English online, and not even like somebody's grandma, but even young Polish people. Like, not everyone has access to to English on a decent level to learn. So there is people creating content like that. There is people giving help with accountants and going through the whole suing your parents thing, or maybe with for queer couples with children. That's also an issue in Poland, that sometimes they are not being honored as both the parents, even if they're married. And that there is a case like that every so often in the Polish courts. Support for homeless queer people because they've been kicked out. So I think definitely raising awareness and definitely sending some donations, especially right now also because the organizations, on top of everything else, are also helping Ukrainian queer people getting the help they need while they flee to Poland.
Right. No, I think that's also very, very interesting. I did want to ask you about this suing your parents thing. That's in the case the parents don't want to accept that the child is doing it, or they have to do it if they
they
want
have to do it. I mean,
Really?
it's much easier if the parent is willing to help, but no, that's just because there is no legislature around it. From what I've learned, I think there was a legislature, but they got rid of it in the 90s, and now that's the only way to change your gender marker, to sue your parents for assigning your gender wrong, which doesn't make sense. Technically, you should sue your doctor, but sure. So it's awful, and you also have to do lots of medical exams, and there is also not there isn't like a book or a set way to transition. So people are like, so what do I do? Do I need this? Do I need that? And the answer is you can do it many different ways, and every step depends on who you find in terms of doctors and judges.
Wait a minute. So you're saying in Poland, the only way to change your gender is to sue your parents? That's the official
gender marker, to change the
gender marker in
gender
your passport, let's say. Right.
Yeah, that is the only way.
I have one question, because we had a comment from Hajer about bathrooms and saying that we should get rid of it. Do you agree with this? What do you feel uncomfortable when you go to the bathroom in a public place?
I do. I personally feel much safer in women's bathrooms, so that's where I go. But then I also feel scared that that other people feel uncomfortable. I had a suit in a theater, and I went to the ladies' bathroom, and I was like, "Oh no, am I making people uncomfortable?" But then I would be oh no. I generally think gender-neutral bathrooms are great. And it's sad, for example, even the ways that people sometimes try to work towards it, they do gender-neutral bathroom that is also an accessible bathroom, which also puts me in a very weird position of, what if someone with special needs this bathroom and I'm occupying it and I technically don't need it?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, and I think if there is closed bathrooms with like stalls, that's a non-issue.
I think that the idea of gender neutral bathrooms makes a lot of sense actually for that. Yeah. So we should definitely consider that. Actually, the disabled bathroom thing, one thing that it's actually not exclusive. It's actually for anyone, but it's designed so that if people have disabilities, they can use that. Just a thing, because it's unlike the parkings. It's actually we cannot use them in things. So that just a point.
But you never know if there is a disabled person waiting outside. Yeah. So that's why I have anxiety also. So I'm like,
For sure. So Irem says, thanks for the tips, Mar. Good insights on the pronouns and making it part of the conversation more openly, not to alienate anyone. And I think probably that's one really important thing, is that it's important to be able to have a conversation. And I also think for people, for the majority of people who are not really, haven't thought this through, I think there needs to be a conversation where it's okay for them to not really understand what are the rules, what do the words mean, why is it important, and as with every change in society, it takes time for people to adjust to a new terminology, and the grammar is a bit challenging. When you use the word they, there's a bit of a, is this plural or is it not? And so it's people have to get used to it. And I guess even more importantly, in each language, there's a different way of approaching it. So you can't just have a universal way of doing things. Now, during Pride Month, a lot of companies have put up statements about their support for Pride and the LGBTQ community. How do you feel about companies communicating? I think last week we had a Dominique Roche as a guest who was saying, the Commission keeps putting up colors on the Berlaymont, and that's pretty much it. And she said, it would be great if they could take action rather than just do the statement and the signaling. So how do you feel about, what should companies do, and how important is the statement versus the action? And I think, to be honest, particularly in Poland, for what you just said, I think a company to make a statement is already taking I guess an important action, since it's seen as making a direct statement in an environment where it could just. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I honestly think that a symbol without action behind it is useless. I'm sorry, a bit harsh. Of course, showing solidarity and showing support is great. But if there is nothing behind it, then slowly it actually becomes like an empty marketing ploy. Because we're gonna put a rainbow up during June, and then some queer people will buy stuff for us, and then we will not do anything about it throughout the entire rest of the year. Which I think is kind of using using queer people just as available income for those companies, which I don't think is great. So I think action always will be the most important thing to do, and it can be even small things. There is there's little kombucha drinks that you can buy in Poland, and every 5 groszy, which is a 5 cents, goes towards one of the LGBTQ organizations. Except during June, every 20 groszy from people buying this drink will go towards the same organization, and that's not such a big thing. It is a big thing, but it's not such a big thing to lose from the company's standpoint. So I think you can always do something. So just putting up a rainbow, it's not enough. And I think especially in Poland, when we do need the resources and we do need the tangible help, and where there is especially people being very rainbow hungry for all of the merch, all of the support, and getting really excited. Because I remember going to UK and being like, oh my God, there is a rainbow flag on the city council. That's so cool. UK is great, the most queer-friendly country in the world, which is not the case, spoilers. I do understand this excitement, but as you grow up and as you live life, you see that those can be just empty symbols, and that is not enough.
No, it's totally true. It's like the Biden administration putting the rainbow flag on in Afghanistan, in Afghanistan, and then pulling out and letting the Taliban take over. So, great that you put on a rainbow flag, but not sure it was really helpful. Yeah, no, good point. You also had another story to tell about, was it a hamburger in Poland, rainbow?
Yeah. So that's especially a funny thing, because it's a vegan fast food chain in Poland, which the vegan community and the queer community generally, I think, tends to overlap a little bit everywhere. And so they have a monthly burger, and they put out the Pride burger for June. And someone asked if any of the money from the burger would go towards any queer organizations. And they wrote the longest comment in reply to that. That was very many words to just say no. And I got angry, you know, because like their clientele is lots of queer people, and they like made themselves so queer friendly, but you can see through that that's just marketing, and that's just trying to get money from us and not actually support us.
Right. So we have a final comment from Justin saying, for companies, there's always a fine line between virtue signaling and actually supporting LGBTQ plus people. Companies must go the extra mile and actually stop supporting politicians who are vehemently against LGBTQ plus rights. Yeah, I think that's so. Thank you very much for sharing your story and your insights. And I think, you know, it begins with communication. It begins with awareness. And understanding, which I think then can help people take the right action. But thank you so much for sharing your story. We'll continue the conversation online. Wish you a speedy recovery, and looking forward to connecting with you soon and continuing this online. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy Pride.
Bye.